What would you do if your family excluded you from Thanksgiving and then lied about why? Would you confront them? Would you accept the rejection gracefully? Would you find a way to show them exactly what they were missing? Well, when I discovered my family was having their intimate Thanksgiving dinner at a fancy restaurant without me, I bought the restaurant and became their host whether they wanted me there or not. My name is Betty, and this is the story of how my family's decision to exclude me from Thanksgiving led to the most unforgettable holiday meal they would ever experience. It's a story about tradition, respect, and what happens when people take for granted the very person who has been the heart of their family celebrations for over 4 decades. For 43 years, Thanksgiving at the Henderson house had been a sacred tradition. From 1980, when my husband Robert and I were newlyweds with our first tiny apartment, through when I was hosting dinner for 16 family members in the dining room that Robert and I had carefully planned and decorated specifically for large family gatherings, Thanksgiving had always been my holiday. I was the one who planned the menu, coordinated the timing of multiple dishes, prepared the stuffing recipe that had been passed down through 3 generations of women in my family, and created the warm, welcoming atmosphere that made Thanksgiving feel like more than just a meal. It felt like coming home. Every year, I started planning in September. I would call each family member to confirm attendance, ask about dietary restrictions, coordinate who would bring what side dishes, and begin the intricate scheduling required to get a turkey, 3 kinds of stuffing, 4 vegetable dishes, homemade rolls, and 3 desserts, all ready to serve at exactly 2 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day. My kitchen during Thanksgiving week looked like a military operation. Lists covered every surface, timelines were posted on the refrigerator, and I moved through the preparation with the precision of someone who had been perfecting this meal for nearly half a century. But more than the food, I created the traditions that made our Thanksgiving special. The gratitude circle where each person shared something they were thankful for from the past year. The family photo taken in the same spot in my living room every year, creating a visual timeline of how our family had grown and changed. The afternoon walk around the neighborhood while dinner settled, led by me and including anyone who wanted to participate. These traditions weren't just activities. They were the foundation of our family identity, the shared experiences that connected us across generations and reminded us that we belonged to something larger than ourselves. My grandchildren had grown up expecting Thanksgiving to mean Grandma Betty's house, Grandma Betty's turkey, Grandma Betty's stories about Thanksgiving's past, and Grandma Betty's insistence that family comes first, always and forever. But this year, everything changed. The conversation that shattered my Thanksgiving world happened on a Tuesday evening in early November. My daughter Linda called with what she presented as exciting news about this year's holiday plans. "Mom, we've been talking as a family, and we've decided to do something different for Thanksgiving this year." "Different how?" I asked, though I already felt a knot forming in my stomach. "We're going to keep it smaller and more intimate, just the immediate family. Linda, Tom, the kids, Michael and his family. We thought it would be nice to have a more manageable celebration." More manageable. Translation: more manageable without me organizing, coordinating, and hosting in my home that was specifically designed for large family gatherings. "Where are you planning to have this smaller celebration?" I asked. "We're still working out the details, but probably at Linda's house. Her dining room can seat 8 people comfortably." 8 people. Out of the 16 family members who had attended Thanksgiving at my house the previous year, they were cutting the guest list to 8 and planning to celebrate without the woman who had been hosting this holiday for 4 decades. "And what about me?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer. "Oh, Mom, we know how much work Thanksgiving is for you, and we thought you might appreciate a year off from all the stress and preparation. You could have a nice quiet day to yourself, maybe order in from somewhere nice. A year off from the holiday that had been the cornerstone of my family life for 43 years. A nice, quiet day to myself, while my children and grandchildren celebrated the holiday I had taught them to value without me. Linda, Thanksgiving has never been work for me. It's been joy. It's been the highlight of my year. The day when our entire family comes together to celebrate what we're grateful for." "I know, Mom, but you're 76 years old, and hosting that many people is a lot of physical strain. You just thought it would be easier to celebrate without me than to help me with the preparations, if you were concerned about my ability to manage. It's not about celebrating without you, Mom. It's about giving you a break from the responsibility." But I could hear in Linda's voice that it absolutely was about celebrating without me. They had decided that my friends, my traditions, my home, and my 4 decades of Thanksgiving expertise were no longer necessary for their holiday celebration. What they didn't realize was that they were about to learn exactly how necessary I had been and exactly what they were giving up when they chose convenience over family connection. But wait until you see what I discovered about their small, intimate celebration. After Linda's phone call, I spent the next few days feeling hurt, confused, and increasingly suspicious about the real reasons behind my family's decision to exclude me from Thanksgiving. The story didn't add up. If they truly wanted a smaller, more intimate celebration to reduce stress and preparation, why wouldn't they ask me to help plan a simpler version of our traditional gathering? Why wouldn't they offer to take over some of the cooking responsibilities while still maintaining the family traditions that had defined our holidays for decades? And if they were so concerned about the physical strain of hosting 16 people, why didn't they offer to move the celebration to a larger home, like Michael's house, which had an even bigger dining room than mine, while still including me as the guest of honor, rather than the excluded family member? The more I thought about their explanation, the more it sounded like a polite way of telling me that I was no longer wanted at family gatherings, that my age, my traditions, and my central role in our family celebrations had become inconvenient for them. So I decided to investigate exactly what kind of small, intimate celebration they were planning. My first clue came from my 10-year-old granddaughter, Emma, who called me 3 days after Linda's announcement to ask a question that revealed much more than she realized. "Grandma Betty, Mommy says we're not having Thanksgiving at your house this year, because you need a rat. But if you're resting, how come Mommy is calling restaurants to ask about private dining rooms for 12 people? 12 people. Not the 8 people that Linda had mentioned when she told me about their plans for a smaller celebration, and not a home-cooked dinner in Linda's dining room, but a restaurant meal in a private dining room. Emma, sweetie, did you hear which restaurants your mommy was calling? I heard her talking to Romano's Italian restaurant, and she sounded really excited about their Thanksgiving menu. She said they have turkey and all the traditional stuff, but it's more elegant than what we usually have. More elegant than what we usually have. Translation: more elegant than the home-cooked meal with family recipes and personal touches that I had been providing for 4 decades. Romano's Italian restaurant was one of the most expensive dining establishments in our city, known for its upscale atmosphere, premium prices, and exclusive private dining rooms. This was not a simple, intimate family gathering. This was a luxury celebration that they were planning to enjoy without me. My second clue came from my daughter-in-law, Sarah, who called me the following day with what she thought was a casual question about Thanksgiving recipes. "Betty, I know you're not cooking this year, but could you give me your stuffing recipe? Linda wants to contribute something homemade to their dinner." Their dinner. Not our dinner. Not the family dinner. But their dinner. The dinner that I was not invited to attend. "Sarah, where exactly is this dinner taking place?" "Oh, didn't Linda tell you? They booked the private dining room at Romano's for Thanksgiving Day. It seats up to 16 people, so there's plenty of room for everyone." 16 people. They had booked a private dining room that could accommodate exactly the same number of people who had attended Thanksgiving at my house the previous year. This wasn't about reducing the size of the celebration or making it more manageable. This was about excluding me specifically while maintaining the same large family gathering I had been hosting for decades. My third clue came from overhearing a phone conversation between Linda and my son, Michael, which I accidentally intercepted when Linda called my house looking for Michael, not realizing he was at my home helping me with some yard work. "Michael, I just confirmed the reservation at Romano's for Thursday at 2 p.m. The private dining room is beautiful, and their Thanksgiving menu looks amazing. The kids are gonna love it." "What about Mom?" Michael asked. "Are you sure she's okay with not being included?" "Michael, Mom is 76 years old. She's been hosting Thanksgiving for over 40 years. Don't you think she deserves a break from all that work and stress?" "But Linda, Thanksgiving has always been Mom's favorite holiday. Are we sure this is what she wants? Or is this what we want?" "What we want is a nice, elegant celebration without having to worry about Mom overdoing it or getting stressed about cooking for so many people. Romano's will handle everything professionally, and we can all just relax and enjoy each other's company. Without Mom. Mom can have a quiet, peaceful day to herself. Maybe she'll appreciate not having to clean the house for days ahead of time and then spend the entire holiday in the kitchen." What I was hearing wasn't concern for my well-being. It was rationalization for a decision they had already made to exclude me from the family celebration because they preferred the convenience and elegance of a restaurant meal to the tradition and warmth of a home-cooked dinner prepared with love. But the most important lesson came 6 months later when Linda called to ask if she could learn some of my traditional recipes so she could help maintain our family's culinary heritage. Mom, I realize that when you're gone someday, all of these family recipes and traditions could disappear if someone doesn't learn them from you. Are you asking to become my apprentice, Linda? I'm asking to become worthy of inheriting the traditions you've been maintaining for our family. I want to learn not just how to cook these dishes, but why they matter and what they represent. That conversation led to weekly cooking lessons in Romano's kitchen, where Linda, Carol, and Sarah learned not just the technical aspects of preparing traditional family meals, but the stories, memories, and values that made those meals meaningful. Mom, Carol said during one of our cooking sessions, I understand now that when we tried to exclude you from Thanksgiving, we weren't just rejecting a person, we were rejecting our own family identity. And now we understand that maintaining family traditions is everyone's responsibility, not just yours. We want to be partners in preserving what you've created for us. Romano's became more than just my business. It became a training ground for the next generation of family tradition keepers. A place where my children and daughters-in-law learned to appreciate the skill and love that had gone into 4 decades of family celebrations. But the most satisfying outcome was watching my grandchildren develop a deep appreciation for family traditions and an understanding that convenience and elegance are poor substitutes for love and authenticity. Grandma Betty, Emma said during one of our family dinners at Romano's, I want to learn how to make Thanksgiving dinner too, so that when I grow up, I can keep our traditions going for my children. What do you think makes a tradition worth keeping, Emma? I think a tradition is worth keeping when it brings families together and helps people remember that they love each other and that they're grateful for all the good things in their lives. And that, my dear listeners, is how my family's attempt to exclude me from Thanksgiving became the catalyst for the strongest family bonds we had ever experienced. Sometimes the most painful rejections lead to the most meaningful reconciliations, when people are forced to confront what they're really losing and why it matters more than they realized. The restaurant I bought to teach my family a lesson about gratitude became a thriving business that brought joy to hundreds of families who understood that the best meals are prepared with love and served with appreciation. But more importantly, it became the foundation for teaching my own family that traditions aren't burdens to be discarded when they become inconvenient. They're treasures to be preserved, honored, and passed down to future generations, who will someday understand their value. My family learned that excluding people from celebrations doesn't make those celebrations more manageable. It makes them meaningless. They learned that convenience is a poor substitute for connection, and that elegance can't replace authenticity. Most importantly, they learned that the people who love you most are often the people whose contributions you take most for granted, and that appreciating those contributions while you still can is one of the most important expressions of gratitude you can offer. The Thanksgiving that almost happened without me became the most memorable Thanksgiving our family ever shared, not because of the elegant restaurant setting, but because it taught us all to be truly grateful for the love, traditions, and family connections that make life meaningful. If my story teaches you anything, I hope it's this. Never take for granted the people who maintain your family traditions, who cook your holiday meals with love, who create the continuity that connects you to past generations and future possibilities. And remember that sometimes the most powerful way to teach people about gratitude is to show them exactly what they're in danger of losing through their own choices and assumptions. I have more stories about family, traditions, gratitude, and the surprising ways that exclusion can lead to deeper inclusion, when people learn to appreciate what they almost lost. So pull up a chair, treasure your family traditions, and remember to subscribe to Grandma True Stories, because the most important lessons about love often come from the most challenging family experiences. The restaurant they thought would replace me became the place where they learned that no professional service could ever replace the love of a family member who chooses to serve others out of care rather than obligation. I had no idea that the woman they thought would be spending Thanksgiving alone was about to become the most important person in their restaurant celebration. You see, what my family didn't know was that I had been friends with the Romano family, who owned Romano's Italian restaurant, for over 20 years. Antonio Romano and his wife Maria had been customers at the bank where I had worked as a loan officer before my retirement, and we had maintained a friendship based on our shared Italian heritage and our love of traditional family cooking. Over the years, Antonio and Maria had often talked about wanting to retire and sell the restaurant to someone who would maintain its family atmosphere and commitment to quality. They were looking for a buyer who understood that Romano's was more than just a business. It was a place where families created memories and celebrated life's most important moments. When I called Antonio, the day after overhearing Linda's conversation with Michael, I made him an offer that he couldn't refuse, and that would teach my family a lesson about taking family for granted, that they would never forget. But you haven't seen the most shocking part of my plan yet. Antonio, I said when he answered the phone at Romano's, it's Betty Henderson. I understand you and Maria are still interested in selling the restaurant. Betty, it's so good to hear from you. Yes, we've been thinking more seriously about retirement lately. Maria's arthritis is making it difficult for her to work the long hours, and I'm ready to spend more time with our grandchildren. What would you say if I told you I was interested in buying Romano's? The silence on the other end of the phone lasted long enough that I wondered if the connection had been lost. Betty, are you serious? You want to buy the restaurant?
I'm completely serious, Antonio. I have the financial resources. I understand the restaurant business from my years in banking, and I appreciate what you and Maria have built here. But I'm also interested in making some changes that would benefit both of us.
What kind of changes? I'd like to buy the restaurant immediately, this week if possible, with the understanding that you and Maria would continue to manage the day-to-day operations for the next 6 months while I learn the business. After that, you could retire with full pensions, and I would take over as the owner-operator. Betty, that's a very generous offer. But buying a restaurant is a huge undertaking. Are you sure you've thought this through? Antonio, I've been thinking about this for years, actually. Since I retired from the bank, I've been looking for a meaningful way to use my business skills and my love of cooking and hospitality. Romano's would be perfect for me. This was true, though not the complete truth. I had been considering various business investments since my retirement, but I had never seriously thought about buying a restaurant until my family decided to exclude me from Thanksgiving while planning to celebrate at Romano's. When would you want to take possession? Antonio asked. Immediately. Today, if the paperwork can be completed that quickly. Betty, today is Tuesday. Are you planning some kind of special event for this weekend? You could say that. I'm planning a very special Thanksgiving dinner for some family members who think they're going to be dining at your restaurant without me. I'd like to surprise them by being their host after all. Antonio laughed, the first genuine laugh I'd heard in weeks. Betty, are you buying my restaurant to teach your family a lesson? I'm buying your restaurant because it's a good investment, and because I believe I can make it even more successful than it already is. The lesson for my family is just an added bonus. In that case, let me call my lawyer and see how quickly we can make this happen. The purchase of Romano's Italian restaurant was completed in 48 hours, which had to be some kind of record for a business transaction of that magnitude. Antonio's lawyer, my lawyer, and the bank's commercial lending officer worked around the clock to finalize the paperwork, transfer the licenses, and complete the financial arrangement. By Thursday morning, Thanksgiving Day, I was the proud owner of the restaurant where my family planned to have their intimate celebration without me. But owning the restaurant was only the first part of my plan. The second part involved making sure that my family's Thanksgiving dinner would be an experience they would never forget. I arrived at Romano's at 6 a.m. on Thanksgiving morning, wearing my most elegant dress and the apron that I had used for 43 years of Thanksgiving preparations. Maria and Antonio were already there, preparing for what they thought would be their last Thanksgiving service as restaurant owners. Betty, Maria said when she saw me, you look beautiful. Are you ready for your first day as a restaurant owner? I'm ready for the most important Thanksgiving dinner I've ever prepared, I replied. I spent the morning working alongside Romano's professional kitchen staff, preparing a Thanksgiving menu that combined the elegant presentation that my family apparently preferred with the traditional recipes and personal touches that had made my home-cooked dinners special for 4 decades. The turkey was brined with my grandmother's secret herb mixture. The stuffing was prepared according to the recipe that had been passed down through 3 generations of women in my family. The cranberry sauce was made from scratch using the same technique I had perfected over 40 years of Thanksgiving preparations. but everything was presented with the professional plating and elegant garnishes that Romano's was known for. This would be a meal that satisfied my family's apparent desire for restaurant-quality sophistication, while maintaining the authentic flavors and family traditions that I had been providing all along. The private dining room was decorated with fall flowers, elegant linens, and the kind of refined table setting that my family clearly thought was superior to my home dining room arrangements. But in the center of the table, I placed a handwritten menu that listed not just the dishes being served, but the family history behind each recipe, the memories associated with each tradition, and the love that went into every element of the meal they were about to receive. At 1:30 p.m., 30 minutes before their 2 p.m. reservation, I positioned myself in the kitchen, where I could see the dining room entrance, and waited for my family to arrive for the surprise of their lives. But what happened when they walked through that door exceeded even my expectations for drama and shock. Now, here's where everything changed completely. At exactly 2 p.m., my family arrived at Romano's Italian restaurant, dressed in their finest clothes, and carrying the excitement of people who believed they were about to enjoy an elegant holiday meal without the stress and complications they associated with family gatherings at Grandma Betty's house. I watched through the kitchen window as Linda led the group through the main dining room toward the private dining room they had reserved. She was wearing a beautiful burgundy dress that I had given her for her birthday the previous year, and she was laughing with my daughter-in-law Sarah about how nice it was to have Thanksgiving dinner served to us for once, instead of having to do all the work ourselves.
All the work ourselves.
As if Linda had ever done anything more than bring a store-bought dessert to my Thanksgiving celebrations. Michael was carrying my grandson Tommy, age 4, who was wearing a tiny suit and tie, and looking around the restaurant with the wide-eyed wonder that children have when they're somewhere fancy and special. My granddaughter Emma, now 10 years old, was walking beside her cousin Jake, age 8, and they were talking excitedly about the grown-up restaurant where they were going to have Thanksgiving dinner. Behind them came Tom, Linda's husband, my son-in-law David, and my other daughter Carol with her husband Mark. The entire extended family was there, all 16 people who had attended Thanksgiving at my house the previous year, celebrating the holiday without the woman who had made it meaningful for them for 4 decades. As they approached the entrance to the private dining room, I stepped out of the kitchen and into the main dining room, positioning myself where they would see me as soon as they turned around. "Welcome to Romano's," I said, in my warmest hostess voice. "I hope you're all ready for a very special Thanksgiving dinner." The reaction was everything I had hoped for, and more. Linda stopped so suddenly that Sarah nearly collided with her from behind. Her face went from excited anticipation to confusion to shock to something that looked like panic, all in the space of about 3 seconds. "Mom?" she said, as if she wasn't quite sure she was seeing me correctly. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here to welcome you to my restaurant," I replied calmly. "Surprise, I'm your hostess today." "Your restaurant?" Michael asked, still holding Tommy, who was looking back and forth between his parents with the confusion that children feel when adults are having conversations they don't understand. "I bought Romano's yesterday. Antonio and Maria decided it was time to retire, and I decided it was time to try something new. It seemed like perfect timing, especially since I learned that my family was planning to have Thanksgiving dinner here." The silence that followed was the most complete silence I had ever experienced in a room full of 16 people. Even the children seemed to sense that something significant was happening, and stopped their chatter to look at the adults with curious expressions. Carol was the first to speak. "Mom, you bought a restaurant. When? Why?" "I bought the restaurant on Tuesday, after I learned that my family was having an intimate Thanksgiving celebration at Romano's without me. I thought it would be nice if I could be your hostess after all, even if you didn't want me to be part of your family celebration." Linda's face had progressed from shock to embarrassment, to something that looked like anger. "Mom, this is manipulative. You can't just buy a restaurant to force yourself into our dinner plans." "I didn't buy a restaurant to force myself into your dinner plans, Linda. I bought a restaurant because it's a good business investment, and because I realized I wanted to spend my retirement years doing something meaningful with my hospitality skills. The fact that you're here on the very day I took ownership is just a happy coincidence." This was technically true, though not the complete truth. But Linda didn't need to know that her rejection had been the catalyst for a business decision that I was already discovering I was genuinely excited about. Tom was looking around the elegant dining room with new understanding. "Betty, This must have cost you a fortune. It cost me exactly what it was worth, Tom. And it's already proving to be a very valuable investment. Sarah was still processing the implications of what had happened. Betty, does this mean you're going to be serving our Thanksgiving dinner? I'm going to be doing exactly what I've been doing for 43 years, preparing a traditional Thanksgiving meal with love, attention to detail, and respect for family traditions. The only difference is that this year, you'll be receiving it in a more elegant setting than my dining room. But Mom, Michael said, we wanted to give you a break from all the work and stress hosting Thanksgiving. And I appreciate that sentiment, Michael. But as you can see, I don't consider preparing Thanksgiving dinner to be work or stress. I consider it to be my contribution to our family's traditions and my expression of love for all of you. Emma tugged on her mother's sleeve. Mommy, does this mean Grandma Betty is going to make the stuffing the way she always does? Yes, sweetheart, I said before Linda could answer. Everything you're going to eat today was paired according to the same family recipes I've been using for decades. The only difference is the presentation, but the most important part of the revelation was still to come. I gestured toward the private dining room. Shall we go to your table? I think you'll find that the menu I've prepared for you today is very special. Wait until you see what they discovered when they sat down to their elegant restaurant meal. As my family filed into the private dining room, I could see them taking in the elegant table setting, the beautiful fall decorations, and the sophisticated atmosphere that they had apparently been seeking when they decided to exclude me from their Thanksgiving celebration. But in the center of the table, they found something that made it clear this wasn't going to be the impersonal restaurant experience they had expected. The handwritten menu I had created told the story of every dish they were about to receive. Roasted turkey with sage and thyme, prepared according to great-grandmother Margaret's recipe, first served at our family Thanksgiving in 19. Traditional stuffing with Italian sausage, the recipe that Betty learned from her mother-in-law in 1961 and has been preparing for 43 consecutive Thanksgivings. Honey-glazed carrots, Robert's favorite vegetable dish, prepared the way Betty made it throughout their 38-year marriage. Cranberry sauce with orange zest, made from scratch every year since 1980. Same year Betty and Robert bought their first house and started hosting family holidays. Each dish on the menu included not just the ingredients and preparation method, but the family history and personal memories that made it meaningful. This wasn't just a restaurant meal, it was a testament to 4 decades of family traditions and the love that had gone into creating and maintaining them. Linda picked up the menu and read it silently, her expression changing from irritation to something that looked like recognition and maybe shame. Mom, she said quietly, this is the same menu you've been serving for years. Yes, it is. The same recipes, the same traditions, the same care and attention that I've been putting into our family Thanksgiving celebrations since before some of you were born. The only difference is that this year you're receiving it in the elegant restaurant setting that you apparently preferred to my dining room. Michael was reading over Linda's shoulder. And you prepared all of this yourself? I prepared all of this myself, the same way I've been preparing Thanksgiving dinner for 43 years. The only difference is that today, I had the help of Romano's professional kitchen staff and the benefit of restaurant-quality equipment. Carol was looking around the private dining room with new understanding. Mom, this room is beautiful, but it doesn't feel like Thanksgiving. What do you mean, sweetheart? I mean, it feels like a fancy dinner, but it doesn't feel like family. It doesn't feel like home. Well, Carol, this is what you chose when you decided that my home wasn't elegant enough for your Thanksgiving celebration. This is what you thought you wanted: professional service, sophisticated presentation, and freedom from the responsibility of contributing to family traditions. Emma was looking at the menu with confusion. Grandma Betty, why does it say this is the 43rd time you're making stuffing for Thanksgiving? I thought this was the first time you were cooking at a restaurant. This is the first time I'm cooking at a restaurant, Emma, but it's the 43rd time I'm cooking Thanksgiving dinner for our family. I've been preparing this meal for your parents, your aunts and uncles, and your cousins since before most of them were born. But Mommy said you needed a rest from cooking Thanksgiving dinner because it was too much work for you. The innocence of Emma's observation created the most uncomfortable silence of the afternoon. Out of the mouths of babes came the truth that the adults had been trying to avoid, that their decision to exclude me hadn't been about protecting me from work, but about freeing themselves from obligations they found inconvenient.
Emma,
I said gently, cooking Thanksgiving dinner has never been work for me. It's in my pleasure and my privilege to provide this meal for our family every year. Tom was reading the descriptions of the side dishes and looking increasingly uncomfortable. Betty, when you write about Robert's favorite vegetables and the house you and Robert bought in 1980, you're talking about memories and traditions that are part of our family history. Yes, I am. These recipes aren't just food, Tom. They're family heritage. They're the continuation of traditions that connect us to previous generations and create consistency for future generations. And by excluding you from Thanksgiving, Sarah said slowly, we were breaking that continuity. You were choosing convenience over connection, elegance over authenticity, and personal comfort over family tradition. But I understand why you made that choice, and I don't blame you for wanting something different. But Mom, Linda said, if you understand why we wanted something different, why did you buy a restaurant to force us to have dinner with you? I didn't buy a restaurant to force you to have dinner with me, Linda. I bought a restaurant to show you that the woman you thought was too old and too stressed to handle Thanksgiving dinner is actually capable of taking on much more complex challenges than cooking for 16 people in her own kitchen. The lesson was beginning to sink in, but the most important part was still to come. I excused myself to check on the final preparations in the kitchen, leaving my family to absorb what they had learned so far. When I returned 10 minutes later with the first course, a beautiful butternut squash soup garnished with pumpkin seeds and fresh herbs, I found them engaged in animated conversation. Mom, Michael said as I placed the soup bowls around the table, we need to apologize for the way we handled this Thanksgiving planning. What specifically are you apologizing for, Michael? For assuming that you wanted a break from hosting Thanksgiving instead of asking what you wanted. For planning a celebration without you instead of planning a celebration with you. For treating your 43 years of family traditions like they were disposable instead of valuable. This was exactly the conversation I had been hoping to provoke, but I wasn't finished with the lesson yet. And what have you learned from this experience? I asked. But wait until you see what happened when they truly understood the scope of what they had almost lost. As my family worked their way through the Thanksgiving meal, I had prepared for them in my newly purchased restaurant. The conversation gradually shifted from apologies and embarrassment to something deeper and more meaningful. A genuine discussion about family, traditions, and what we owe to each other across generations. Mom, Carol said as she tasted the stuffing that was identical to what I had been serving for decades. I think I understand now why you were hurt by our decision to have Thanksgiving without you. Tell me what you understand, sweetheart. I understand that when we excluded you from Thanksgiving, we weren't just excluding a person. We were excluding the heart of our family traditions. We were treating 43 years of love and care like they were replaceable with restaurant service. And, Linda added, we were making decisions about your life without asking what you wanted. We assumed you were tired of hosting Thanksgiving instead of asking if you wanted help with hosting Thanksgiving. This insight was exactly what I had hoped they would reach, but I wanted to make sure they understood the full implications of what they had almost done. What you almost did, I said as I served the main course, was break a chain of family continuity that stretches back generations. These recipes came from my grandmother, my mother, and my mother-in-law. They represent the accumulated wisdom and love of women who understood that feeding their families was one of the most important ways they could express their care and create lasting memories. And by excluding you, Tom said, we were saying that your accumulated wisdom and love weren't important to us anymore. You were saying that convenience was more important than continuity, that professional service was more valuable than personal care, and that elegance mattered more than authenticity. Michael was helping Tommy, age 4, cut his turkey into manageable pieces. But Mom, what if we had talked to you about our concerns instead of just making the decision to exclude you? What if we had asked how we could help make Thanksgiving less stressful for you while still maintaining the traditions? What would you have suggested, Michael? Maybe we could have offered to take over some of the cooking responsibilities while still having dinner at your house. Maybe we could have hired a cleaning service to help with the preparation and cleanup. Maybe we could have potluck style where everyone contributed substantial dishes instead of just bringing token side items. All of those would have been wonderful options that would have preserved our family traditions while addressing any concerns about my workload. Sarah was looking around the elegant private dining room with new perspective. Betty, this restaurant setting is beautiful, and the food is delicious. But Carol was right earlier. It doesn't feel like family. It doesn't feel like home. What makes a family celebration feel like home, Sarah? It's not the setting or the professional presentation. It's the personal touches, the shared memories, the thuns that we're participating in something, that's bigger than just one meal. It's knowing that the person preparing our food is doing it out of love rather than professional obligation. Emma, my 10-year-old granddaughter, had been listening to this adult conversation with the serious attention that children give to topics they sense are important. "Grandma Betty," she said, "are you going to keep this restaurant forever?" "I might, sweetheart. It turns out I really enjoy the restaurant business, and I think I could be good at running Romano's. But are you going to keep cooking Thanksgiving dinner for our family?" This was the question that got to the heart of what my family was really worried about. Not just whether they would be included in future celebrations, but whether there would be future celebrations that maintained the traditions they were just beginning to realize they valued. "Emma, I'm going to keep cooking Thanksgiving dinner for our family as long as our family wants me to, too. But I want to make sure that everyone understands that family traditions require family participation. They can't be maintained by one person. They require everyone to contribute, to care, and to choose family connection over personal convenience." Linda was wiping away tears as she listened to this conversation. "Mom, we want to participate. We want to contribute. We want to choose family connection over convenience. We just didn't realize how much we were taking for granted until we almost lost it." "And what are you taking for granted, Linda?" "We were taking for granted that you would always be available to maintain our family traditions for us, without requiring any effort or appreciation from us. We were treating you like a service provider instead of like the heart of our family." This was the understanding I had been working toward, but there was one more lesson I wanted them to absorb. "Here's what I want you to remember from this Thanksgiving," I said as we prepared to share dessert pumpkin pie made from my grandmother's recipe, and apple crisp prepared according to the method Robert's mother had taught me in. "I want you to remember that family traditions aren't automatic. They don't maintain themselves. They require intention, effort, appreciation, and the willingness to prioritize family connection over personal convenience. I want you to remember that excluding someone from family celebrations doesn't just hurt that person, it breaks the continuity that makes your family special and unique. And I want you to remember that the people who love you most are often the people whose contributions you take most for granted. And that losing those people means losing irreplaceable pieces of your family identity." Tom raised his wine glass. "I'd like to propose a toast to Betty, who taught us more about family and gratitude in one afternoon than we learned in years of taking her love for granted." As my family raised their glasses to toast the woman they had tried to exclude from their Thanksgiving celebration, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks: the deep satisfaction that comes from being appreciated by the people you love most. But the most meaningful moment was still to come. After dinner, as we sat around the table sharing the gratitude circle that had been part of our Thanksgiving tradition for decades, Emma raised her hand to speak. "I'm grateful for Grandma Betty, who didn't let us make a mistake about what's important on Thanksgiving." "What mistake were we about to make, sweetheart?" Carol asked. "We were about to think that Thanksgiving is about fancy restaurants and elegant food. But Grandma Betty showed us that Thanksgiving is about family love and tradition, and being grateful for people who take care of us." Out of the mouths of babes came the wisdom that the adults had needed to learn: that gratitude isn't about receiving elegant meals in sophisticated settings, but about appreciating the love and care that family members provide for each other across decades of shared experiences. 3 months after that memorable Thanksgiving, I was still running Romano's Italian restaurant, which had become more successful than ever under my ownership. But more importantly, I was still hosting family gatherings that honored our traditions, while incorporating the lessons we had all learned about appreciation, participation, and the importance of never taking family love for granted. My family's attempt to exclude me from Thanksgiving had led to the most meaningful family conversation we had ever had, and to a renewed commitment to maintaining the traditions that connected us across generations.